Corey. We originally had this one scheduled fresh off the 10X GrowthCon and the follow-up 10X Ladies event. However, this COVID situation changed things a little bit. Regardless, our guest today is the one and only Elena Cardone. We had her husband, Grant Cardone, on the podcast not too long ago, and he had such a great time. I'm sure he said, Elena, you need to jump on the Run GPG podcast. This interview will be a life changer. I'm sure he said something like that or along those lines. Regardless, let me set things up for our listeners. If you didn't already know, Elena Cardone started her career in Hollywood and soon became a successful actress and model of TV and film fame, a lifelong competitive sport shooter, and now author, businesswoman, public speaker, lifestyle influencer, empire builder, and visionary. Elena currently hosts her own show, Women in Power, and co-hosts the G&E show with her husband, Grant Cardone, who is, as we know, a best-selling author, entrepreneur, and real estate investor. Together, they have created a real estate portfolio of almost $1 billion. Could be more now. Oh, Elena, yeah, it's going up. Yeah. Old stats, Elena. Elena has been happily married since 2004 and lives with Grant and their two daughters, Sabrina and Scarlett, in Miami Beach. The queen of her empire, Elena has designed, constructed, and protected a life outside of the ordinary. She has inspired a legion of followers to create their own empires, lives that are truly fulfilling and beyond the average. She counts her current job as her most important one, Chief Family Officer, where she is a loving mother, fierce wife, and loyal friend. Love that. It's an honor to welcome Elena Cardone to the Run GPG podcast. Elena, welcome.
Welcome, Elena.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. We finally locked this down after some time. Weird times, I know, it's weird times. I was going to ask you, I referenced it at the beginning there. I was going to ask you if you've had any downtime since 10X. And I thought with the COVID situation, for sure, you've taken a breather, you're chilling at home, but it looks like you're busier than ever. Is that the case?
Yeah, definitely. No, there's no downtime. Every time I do downtime, it just gets me in trouble. Like, I don't do good with idleness and boredom. So I know from the last economic collapse, even though this one's slightly different, I know the economy was doing really good before this happened, but from the last collapse, it was all of the massive actions that we took that got us through that. And so now the similar thing that we're going through, it's just I'm reinforcing all of those habits that were really good and got us through it this time. So I'm actually being more disciplined and making myself even busier than ever to outproduce this thing.
Yeah, interesting. We've said you're either going to come out of this, a little heavier and more depressed, or you're going to come out of this like Hercules if you stay disciplined, right? So it's interesting. We'll get into it a little bit. I do want to talk about the 10X GrowthCon and the 10X Ladies event as we get into this. However, I do want to talk about you and your story first. Paint the picture for our listeners of who Elena Cardone is and where you're from. So the first question, where are you from and where did you grow up?
Well, I was born in Madrid, Spain. My mother I was born an American citizen on Spanish soil. She worked at the American embassy there. I left there when I was 1. Both of my parents are American, so I never learned Spanish. I left at 1. And then I was reared in New Orleans, Louisiana, and it was just the wildest, craziest place to grow up. And unless you are there or familiar with the city, like the stories I could tell you are just actually not believable. But yeah, that's where I grew up. And at 17 years old, I had just made some really poor decisions with my life. And so I decided at 17 years old that I needed to go to Los Angeles and did not step foot in college. School was not my thing. But I went to Los Angeles to pursue an acting and a modeling kind of career because that was kind of my only way out of New Orleans and out of that world. And so I went to Los Angeles at 17, knowing no one, and, just had to kind of land on my own feet and figure things out. I was raised to be a very independent, strong woman. I didn't ever want to have to depend on a man for anything. Never wanted to see myself. I never envisioned myself to ever be married or with children. So I was not your typical girl in that way. If most girls do have that kind of fairy tale, like think about their wedding dress, that was not me. And then I ended up marrying Grant Cardone, which was weird because I never liked him when we first met. But
okay, let me ask specifically about that. Now, before we do that, you got into TV at what age?
well, the very first job I ever did was a Sprite commercial, and that was in New Orleans, and I saved up $7,000, and that's how I moved to Los Angeles.
Gotcha. Okay, so commercials, and then you were on what TV show were you on?
I was on USA High. That was
It.
kind
Yeah.
of biggest hit. We did 95 episodes. It aired worldwide. I bought a house, multiple hot rods. I thought I had made it.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the follow-up question: that when and how did you meet Grant Cardone?
I met him on a commercial shoot that I was on, and he was friends with the director. So I met him on the shoot. Briefly, he didn't even really register on my radar. He was not the type of guy I was used to dating. He was more of a business guy, and I was used to dating, this is in my late 20s when I met him. So I was used to dating actors and musicians and that type of world, not business guys. So I met him on a commercial shoot. He got my number from the director. I didn't appreciate the director giving him my number. He calls me. We have a phone conversation that did not go well for him. And I just decided after that, this is total, no. And then hung up the phone with him, and then for the next 13 months, twice a month, he proceeded to call and leave a message on my answer machine with 0 return phone call.
Well, he was relentless, at least.
A lot of great relationships have a similar story. I know my wife and I have something very similar, except I think she stalked me. I'm glad she's not in earshot because she'll correct that. But no, I stalked her for sure. Now, okay, so it took him a long time to pursue you, lock down that first date. What exactly was it that made you say yes to that first date with Grant?
Well, I'm very predictable. He found out at that time I was a sporting clay competitive shooter. So I used to shoot trap and sporting clay, and I've always sucked at skeet, but sporting clay and trap was my deal. I was a competition shooter at that time. And so he found out that that's where I spent all my spare time. And he left a message on my machine that last time and was like, oh, I rented the shooting range if you want to come, because it was closed every Monday or whatever day that was. And so that was the phone call that I called him back because I was, shallow. And I was like, oh, really? He wants to pay for that? It's not cheap. It's not a cheap sport. Oh,
I know.
All of that and then some. Okay. We can go have a little shootout. But I'm predictable and probably shallow, but that's what got me to call him back.
I love it. What's the difference between, what'd you say, clay and skeet? I thought they were the same thing.
No. Okay, so skeet is between two towers where they come from left to right and you change your position.
Yeah.
And you take certain shots. Trap is you have the same positions, but there's a big box down range. And so when you say pull, it goes straight to the left or to the right. You don't know which one. And then you vary your position, which changes the angle of the position of how you have to shoot the clay. Sporting clay is a range that you go on that has different stages that when you say pull, 2 come out at a time. One could be a flyaway and one could be a bouncing rabbit. And so you have to choose which one you're going to hit first, and then you go to multiple stations, and that's called sporting clay. And I happened to be really good at sporting clay and trap, not skeet, not between the two towers.
Listen, I just recently got into shooting, which is fun as hell. Corey, have you ever done it? We're Canadian, so we don't get guns, right? So we have to go to the States, right?
Oh gosh, I'm so sorry.
The worst part though is loading. That's the part that, you got to load them all. For me, that was the worst.
speed loaders. They have speed loaders. Now I'm into competition 3-gun. So I just picked that up 2 years ago, but that was totally not my forte. But yeah, now I do handgun, which is pistol, tactical shotgun, and rifle.
I had my daughter shooting the 45. So they're,
Oh yeah.
young. It looks badass. I got to be honest. When you see, your daughter shooting one of those, have you had your daughter shoot the guns yet?
No, not yet.
Oh, well, is there an age limit? I don't know if there's an age limit on that.
I don't think so. I think when they're responsible enough and have the drive and desire, and you teach them about safety and everything, and then they're good to go.
Got it. Okay. We've painted the picture in the time we have of who Elena Cardone is and where she's from. I do want to talk about Build Your Empire and Building Your Empire. That is the title of your book. It's something you've spoken a lot about as it relates to your family success and legacy. You've talked about how building your family empire means supporting Grant. So he's the CEO of the business and the finances, and you're the CEO or the CFO, F for family, of the house and children. Can you just talk about what building an empire is from your perspective?
Well, I have this book that you just said. And so I say in here, an empire is an operating system, a way of living that sets your purpose, morals, goals, and values at the highest possible level. So when Grant and I decided to formulate this relationship, I had no idea what I was doing in the beginning. As I said, I was this independent, strong, powerful woman who finds myself now married to a guy who yet is not supposed to depend on a guy for anything, which automatically kept him at a distance from me. And it wasn't until the last economy that collapsed in 2008 where I realized, and I was pregnant with my first child, that I realized, wow, I might need to depend on a man right now. Thank goodness this guy is my husband, because I'm pregnant. There's no acting jobs for me right now. And I only have a teeny bit of reserve. So I decided then that I was going to trade in my acting career in order to trade up for the possibility of building an empire with someone. And it turned out that was a very beneficial move that I made. Fortunately, it's very, he was a guy of integrity, and he's lived up to everything that I have wanted him to live up to. So, but it was a difficult choice. And in building an empire, because we're both strong and have really strong viewpoints, we had to figure out in our relationship to stop fighting each other. We had to figure out who gets to be the boss of what, because that stopped all the inner fighting of trying to be this male female vie for power situation. So, Grant happens to be incredible at business. I was an artist. I am not good with math. That is not my strength. So basically we dellied up who does what based on our strengths and weaknesses. It had nothing to do with male and female. It turns out, he's incredible with business, as I said, and he had run them, and I, traded everything in to support him and to us and to get us to a point in our life where I would never have to depend on a director or a studio to anoint me with a job, and he would never, we would never have to depend on an economy for our quote unquote survival. So I made him the boss of the business, or we made him the boss of the business, and I support every decision that he makes. I might act as a sounding board to him or this or that, but at the end of the day, he makes all of those executive decisions because I trust him and because he's never been wrong. And then it turns out, not because I'm a female, but it just so happens that I happen to be very protective of the empire. I decide who comes in, who's not allowed in, and I'm very delicate with the way I maneuver that. So I'm in control of the social scene, all the people that get hired within our household and that are going to come into our lives on that level. And it turns out, I am an incredible mother. I am not perfect, but I am an incredible mother. And I happen to run a really good ship with those girls. And so I get to be the boss of that. And he doesn't. And he has to, whether he agrees with my decision while I figure out if the kids are going to be homeschooled or if they're going to have sugar that day or, whatever the decision is, I run that division. So we are both in control of what we run, and we are trusted to do that well. So the empire, because we got on the same page and really started to work together as a team, we were then able to elevate our game and really start to achieve heightened success. So I actually ironically became more powerful, more independent, more powerful as a woman through a man, ironically, who I've had to become as the challenges that he has put before me. Like, I never would have had that on my own. And so in our empire, we're both interested in the heightened success of each other. And because we work in a coordinated effort with each other, that's what I believe attributed to our heightened success.
Very cool.
Wow,
Interesting
awesome.
perspective for sure. You touched on this. It is imperative that any successful couple, they must work together to achieve their goals. They have to. And it's obvious that you and Grant are doing that, and you talked about this. However, as you grow an empire, there's big decisions that have to be made, as you know. What advice would you give a couple when it comes to making big family decisions? Like, how do you get on the same page as your spouse when you need to make a big or difficult decision?
You have divided up your roles based on who is going to be the most dependable in that area. So when it comes to big family decisions, ultimately, it's my decision because we have agreed upon that. And that was our agreement. And, other people would have to do it the way they would have to do it in their relationship. For us, that is, I get the final say. The kids know that, like, ultimately it's my decision. And Grant supports me in that. And so, that's how we work it out. Everyone can kind of have a voice and opinion or give me their ideas that I can think with. I'm not trying to be the tyrant or try to control the family and be like controlling, or I try to really make the best decision that's going to keep us all feeling optimum about decisions. But that's how we make decisions. We make decisions based on what's best for Team Cardone and who we are and what we represent and what we want to contribute to this world. And we all realize within the family unit, we all have our role to play in that. And the kids really, they've been indoctrinated from a young age as to what we are and what we represent, and they're treated with a lot of respect. And so, even them just understanding when we have to be away, or if I have to be in here and they have to be in another room and can't have my attention right now, them just being able to hold down the fort or be okay while we're out of town, like that is a job that they do so that we can focus on helping people. And so they are rewarded for that contribution and they are acknowledged for their role. They're not just kids having to take it, but they're actual participants in what we're doing. So that's been a really successful action that we've done as a family.
Very interesting. Just thinking about it now, big family decisions. Did Grant call you before he bought his jet?
No, but the jet was my decision. Ironically, Grant was never thinking about a jet. Grant was a 3 million miler. This even goes back before kids, pre-kids. And he would come back from the road and he would be exhausted. He'd miss flights. It was just, he'd come home in a bad mood, blah, 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 blah. And I said, well, what do we have to do to get you to fly private, so that you can come home and be where you want to be and alleviate this problem. And he told me a certain amount that we needed to have. And then when we hit that number, I said, okay, you said this. And so every single sacrifice that I had made to support him until we got financially where we needed to be, then I said, okay, it's time for the plane, which was the first one, the G200. And of course, we're looking at planes together. And then when I said, Grant, you really need a bigger plane. And every time I bring something up like this, he gets furious because I have to get the lecture about how he's the hammer and he goes out and I can say all this and I can think big and have all these dreams, but I'm not the one hitting the pavement and hammering the hammer. And I have to hear the lecture. So of course I got the lecture when I said G550. But then I explained to him, look, it's a way for us to be exposed to the world, for you to get your licensee program out there, for us to, do the 10X tour, to get more people aware of Cardone Capital, blah, 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 blah. The plane has never cost us money. The plane has only brought in money, and it's really is an investment. It's not like, a Lamborghini. We don't have Lamborghinis. We don't need Lamborghinis. We need a vehicle, a nice, luxurious vehicle, if that's what we want, to take us to a location. But I don't need multiple things like that. So it really was an asset. And Grant will tell you that the plane came from my idea, but no, he never has to consult me about any financial purchase that he makes, because he is the most conservative person I know when it comes to money, operating money, controlling money, investing money. He is not careless with money. I've been with him for 16 years. I've never seen him make one mistake, not one.
Yeah. Yeah, it was funny when you were talking about that. It wasn't like he came home with a set of golf clubs. He was like, here's a jet, is what was going through my head. It's super cool. We originally, I was born in Montreal. I grew up out west in Calgary. It's an oil city. And I had friends that were, they were pilots for a lot of the CEOs for these oil companies. And it actually cost the companies money flying public. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, that's why they have the private jets, is because it actually makes money for the company. You can't have a CEO that makes $1 million a year sitting, having flights canceled and sitting there waiting for his flight or whatever. You can't do that. You can't do that.
I know. We've done 4 cities in one day.
Yeah, that's what it makes sense. It's a wise investment. Like if from that perspective, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's interesting.
And you're never gonna make sense of it like that. That's why you need your own when you get to
I want my own too. I want to get my own too. A young woman hears you speak and is inspired to grow her own empire or her family's empire. What words of advice would you give her?
I would tell her I applaud her level of responsibility for owning up to the fact that she wants to do that. It starts with a decision, and all she needs to know is the definition of power. And what is power? Power is the capacity or the ability to influence the behavior of others. And she possesses power now. It does not mean you need to be the CEO of a company. It does not mean you need to have a certain amount of wealth in your bank account. Power is the ability or the capacity to influence the behavior of others. That goes all the way down to having the ability to make your child smile, to make somebody else on the street smile, to influence a decision of another, of anything. You can take it and expand it from there. But you should build an empire. It is your responsibility to do so. The world needs more powerful women leaders. And if you ever need anything from me, call me.
100%. Okay, so let's jump into it then. 10X GrowthCon and 10X Ladies. This took place not too long ago. It was in February, correct? It was February? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so 10X GrowthCon and then the follow-up 10X Ladies event. Honestly, seeing the videos and pictures that came out of there, it looked insane. It looked like the Lollapalooza of entrepreneurs, I called it. You had Kevin Hart, I saw Snoop Dogg, Dana White, I think, Floyd Mayweather. There was fireworks, pyrotechnics, and I saw you juggling fire or something.
Yes.
Like, that happened? Was it as intense as it looked on social media?
Yes, it was more intense.
Was it?
Yeah, they were these huge fan flames of fire. And the first time I lit up with the fire was with the fire dancers the day before. I had learned that routine with the fans 1 month prior. And I am told that what I had to learn, meaning a whole routine, would normally take somebody 6 months to learn. And I had never picked up those fans before. So it was extremely grueling experience for me. I was terrified. I threw the fans accidentally, of course, during rehearsal many times. I lit up the day before. The flames make this huge, loud noise. They're like, and it's hot. It is so hot. Like, and then I was scared to spin them and they come to my face. And it was really scary, but yet extremely thrilling. And I'm really proud of myself for pulling it off. And I really did that fire dance for the audience as an extreme gratitude and thanking them for being there and showing them that we can do anything that we set our mind to, and it doesn't have to be perfect. And it was just a big thank you.
So you weren't worried you might have a Michael Jackson Pepsi commercial situation with the fire juggling?
I was. And that's why I had fake hair. Like the girls that I danced with told me I had to wear this false ponytail thing because they have done that. They stab their hair with the flames all the time. So everyone had fake hair.
I feel like Michael Jackson should have consulted you before he did that commercial. And for the people of a certain age, they will remember this was a Pepsi commercial in the 80s. Corey's old enough.
I remember.
You might not be, Elena. I'm old enough to remember this commercial.
I'm old enough. I hate to admit it.
Okay, so did you have a favorite speaker or keynote from that event? Did you have a favorite moment from the event?
I had a lot of favorite moments. You know, Dana White was impromptu. He just showed up and was like, yeah, you can interview me if you want. And so I thought that was incredible. And then John Travolta, with how just genuine he was and what he said about, he spoke and talked about, you can't assume things, like you can't assume things because it gets you in trouble. And so that really stuck out with me, and I've come back, and that was a huge takeaway for me. And then listening to Kevin Hart, and I mean, he might have been one of my favorites. I just completely loved him, who he was backstage and his message. I couldn't believe how similar it is and what, we kind of go through. And he was powerful. He was extremely powerful. I love Magic John. I mean, how do you compare? It was just like one after the other of these incredible speakers that just blew me away.
I'm a huge Travolta fan, so that was pretty cool to see. What were some of the highlights of the 10X Ladies event? Did you have a favorite moment or speaker from that?
Well, it's like asking a mom who's her favorite child. I mean,
That's okay. You can pick one.
Maybe the girls can't. I mean, my 10X Ladies went above and beyond what I thought it was. And every single woman that I had speak just completely killed it and just made me so proud. I mean, it was not a hokey, fluff kind of an event. It was real deal, applicable data that these women gave. Just really, the women left there really feeling strong and powerful with a good sense of know what to do back in the real world. So, I mean, Gloria Mayfield, Danelle, Sherry, both Sherrys, Natalie, the woman, Maria. I mean, it's just, they were all super, super killer.
Are men allowed in that club?
Yeah, they are actually.
Are they really?
Yeah. Every Wednesday I do a 10X Ladies networking call at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Some men have showed up to that. If I was a man, I'd show up. I mean, I think
yeah, no kidding. Let's kick them out though. You should keep it ladies only. I think the ladies like that.
Yeah, well, that's what it was. It's really, it's definitely, my group is not a man bashing by any means, because I love men, and I work really well with mine, and it's because of the success of how well we get along that's really helped push us into another stratosphere. So it's not a man bashing group, but I did want to create a safe space for women to just talk about women's issues, which are a little different than men's, where we could just kind of figure it out together or whatnot.
Okay. I like that. Let's move on to some personal development questions with the time we have left. You lead an incredibly busy life. We can all see that. You're always on the go. And I don't want to ask the typical question I mentioned before, which you probably get all the time, which is how do you manage the work-life balance? So I'm going to ask you if there's even such a thing in the Cardone household. Like, I know work and family life are merged together from the looks of it in your household. Like, your daughters travel with you, you and Grant work and speak at events together. So again, does the work-life balance thing even exist in your world?
I don't really even know what that is. I don't know. Is it like when people, I'm genuinely don't know. I am genuinely asked this all the time and I don't know what that means. Are people asking work-life balance because they're looking for that fairy tale perfect thing and they think if they had work-life balance, then everything would be perfect and there would be no challenges or it would just be easy? Because no, that does not exist for me. Work-life balance does not exist for me. What exists for me is a lot of change, being able to move with change and knowing how to prioritize. Sometimes my children will come first over work and I will have to put it down, and it will drive me crazy that it will take me a lot longer to complete my work cycles when I deem that my children need more of my attention at that moment. And I'm a very good reader of indicators. So I can look at my children and see when they really need me or when they just kind of are just bored, in which case my work will be put first and I will get them occupied onto something else. So I'm constantly juggling, prioritizing, figuring it all out. And then I also have, I'm done being the superhero that cost me a lot of time and energy and thinking that I had to do everything myself and that no one could do it as good as me. And I gave that up years ago, and I have no problem outsourcing for help. I have no problem having a babysitter or a nanny to cook while I play with my kids, or or watch them while Grant needs me in another room to be on a call or to hear something. So I outsource. I depend on other people, not just my husband. I depend on Rock, my executive assistant. I depend on the nanny. I depend on everybody that has roles in this empire to help support us and them and the mission. So I don't know work-life balance. It's I'm fulfilled, I'm happy, but it's never not a challenge.
That's the number one question you're going to get as an entrepreneur, or if you're in a relationship with an entrepreneur, is that work-life balance. And I think people think you can compartmentalize these things, and you can't. If you do live that entrepreneur life, you can't. It's all merged together. There is no such thing as a work-life balance, in my opinion.
Right.
I don't think it exists. I don't. Like, we have I have two daughters and a family. I've been married 23 years. Thanks, guys.
Wow.
Yeah, 23 years, and there is no, like, work-life balance is a really interesting concept. It doesn't exist. And typically that's the answer you get from successful people. There's no such thing. Don't ask me again. And I'm sorry I asked that, Elena. I'm really sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine because so many people want that. But it's like, what I could tell you is the more you have ideas, from where they came from, I don't know, but the ideas of what you think it should be like is every single time I have gotten in trouble. When I just look at my life and say, this is my life, I get to create it the way I want it to look, then I don't have as many problems. So when I thought, from that relationships were supposed to be him not working, paying me attention, holding my hand, watching Netflix and putting up his phone, and that's what love is. That got me into trouble a long time ago because that didn't make me happy. That didn't make him happy. And once I figured out what true love is, and for me, true love is helping another person achieve their goals. And that's what Grant and I do for each other. So I don't need the normal things that other people need. Like, I don't need that hand holding. I also understand that if I give my husband these incredible goals or that surpass his own, even like become a billionaire, that was something he fought me on. But if I give him some purpose or some goal like that, I also realized I can't then say to do that, but yet you need to spend time with me. Because I know in order to become a billionaire, you're going to have to reach the entire planet. And you're going to have helped enough people that have exchanged enough with you to hit that level. And it has nothing to do with money, by the way. I know people hate people with money, and that upsets a lot of people. The billion goal was just a physical universe goal that I could put there that could be attainable as a target. And I put it there because if my husband, who is so amazing and has so much power and so much potential, if he is not shooting for some really big goal, then his game becomes to attack me. So yes, I am selfish. I said, hey, I threw the bone that way, and I said, the target is there. How can I help you get there? And now I have his mind right to where he sees and he owns up to who he really is. And that's the level he should be playing at and is now playing at. And, I know that I don't think normally. And so,
but listen, you nailed it. I've heard you say that if the Cardones become billionaires, it means that you've helped a lot of people along the way.
Grant is standing on some pretty tall shoulders.
Yeah.
Thank you. Because you take any company that is of the billionaire status, and what is the one thing they all have in common? Mm-hmm. They are known and their products are exchanged in abundance. You can't find one company on the Forbes list that does not do what I'm telling you, or I have mentioned or said. It's just, it's just impossible.
What women have inspired you?
Audrey Hepburn. I love her class, her dignity. I love that she never got swept up in the Hollywood. She never went down the drugs and alcohol. She was able to maintain her sense of self, and she was very philanthropic and funny and talented and gorgeous. And she inspires me in that way because she just really empowers what I think, a woman is capable of.
Very cool.
I've also been impressed by Oprah Winfrey. Whether I agree with all of her views or whatnot is beside the point. She came from a really horrendous upbringing. All the cards were stacked against her, and yet she refused to be a victim of her destiny, and she went out and created her own life and outcome, and I admire anyone that does that,
What do you do for fun? I think we talked about this. You go shooting.
That's it. That's exactly what I do. That's just my pure gluttonous enjoyment, shooting 3-gun. I could do it all day. I love my gun guys. They love me. They're an incredible group of people that welcome me into that community. I feel so at home on a gun range, out in nature and shooting targets and challenging my mind. It's actually a lot more difficult than it appears. But that's my hobby. Like I just have adrenaline for the rest of the day. I love it so much.
Yeah, there's nothing like it. It really does get your adrenaline going. Okay, final 2 questions. If you could have dinner with any 3 people in history, past or present, who would they be and why?
Oh man, I already said my 2 girls.
Yeah, that's okay. So we said Oprah and we said Audrey Hepburn.
I'm a huge fan of Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks. I just feel like that was how they got their message delivered in a way that could have been had by everyone, and the strength and the courage of what that must have taken to do. I would love to speak to real change leaders like that, and just hear any advice. Gandhi. I mean, there's so many incredible people that I just would love for them to say, oh, if you just do this, or how do you do, I'd love to be able to pick their brains and
yeah, we get some interesting answers on that one, but it forces you to go just a little bit deeper, right? To see who inspires you and what influenced you. Okay, we're going to finish off our interview today with some one-word associations. It's the first word that comes to your head, and I want you to tell me what the first word that comes to your mind when I say the following. Dreams.
Reality.
Goals.
Purpose.
Family.
There's so many. Family. Integrity.
Empire.
Massive.
Like it. And the final one-word association. Elena.
Empress.
You know?
It's very evident, Elena, that Cardone Capital would not be where it is without your leadership there. So thank you very much for this. It was excellent.
Oh,
Hey, thanks a million, Elena. Really appreciate your time.
It was an
I really
honor.
do. Thank you very much.